get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Ole. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Ole with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, keeping up with the news, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, striking up a conversation, job interviewing, flirting, dating, complaining, all the everyday things we do with our native language in our country of origin, but here in Israel, modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us anytime with your questions, comments, concerns in the chat box. That's exclusively for those who are here live on Zoom. Those of you who are live on Zoom can also ask questions about the specific class we're about to start in the Q&A. I'll be looking only at the Q&A tonight and reviewing the chat in the next day to get back to your questions and concerns and comments. And most important, requests for classes. You can see all of our previous classes up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Ole, and you'll see a playlist with all of our previous lessons. We're now more than 100 lessons in. You could also simply type in Cafe Ole and a topic of your choice. And if we've done it, it's there. It might be named something differently. So it's also always good to not only go through the playlist, you just scroll on the right-hand side all the way down. You also want to subscribe to it, either to it directly or to Nefesh B'Nefesh's channel. So every time a new class goes up, you'll see it there. Also this week, we're really excited this Wednesday to launch our pilot run of conversation-based classes based on the classes we do here together on Mondays. We already have an overwhelming reply of interest in it. Number one, we hope to see all those people there. We'll make space for everyone. Number two, there's still space. The idea is we're going to get this lesson recorded and the vocabulary sent and uploaded to YouTube and to your email as quickly as possible, so you can practice between when class is over this evening at 9 o'clock or 9-ish o'clock, and when we meet again, those who are interested, on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So you have a little background, you have a little time to practice. This is not a class necessarily with homework, although I love the idea that you think there's homework involved, always about that. This is a class to practice your conversation skills, not to test you on your vocabulary, not to see who has more information about Israel and factoids and things like that. We're practicing with what we already have, filling in the blanks perhaps of what you don't know, and writing down, literally writing down new words and where we can fit in and what you can practice in the weeks ahead. So with that, let's get started. Last week, those of you who joined us, I gave you a preview of what we were discussing today by going over one of the commercials ahead of next week's local elections day. Which was a great cue to look at the lyrics of the song and sentence structure and so forth. We're going to look at another ad in a little bit, but today we're going to talk about local elections day. There are a few things that excite me about being an Israeli citizen than voting in Israel. I think in many ways that is the summation of our choice as Olim to move to Israel and to exercise our newfound citizenship. So I'm always a big fan of elections here in Israel. And certainly have had quite a number of them. This is a slightly different one. If this is your first time voting in local elections, there is a lot to be excited for this year. First off, we have started the tradition that local elections day is held nationwide on the same day. We're going to talk about some exceptions to the rule this particular year. But as it's held all throughout the year, all throughout the country on the same day, it is considered a day off of work in those municipalities in which you're going to vote. We'll talk about that in a second. You also vote a little differently in local elections than you do in national elections. But not only is it an exercise of our democracy here in Israel, we're also doing it during a war, which, although it's not the first time in Israeli history we're doing that, it speaks to our strength and resilience that we're able to keep our democratic processes going at such a difficult and challenging time. So with that, we're going to do as much as possible to go over how you vote, what you're voting for, who you're voting for, all the basic questions, because it's next week, right? So instead of doing this the night before Election Day, which is next week, we're going to do it so you have plenty of time to practice. And this week in our conversation class, we're going to talk about how we talk about politics. We're going to get a little sample today. this week, this conversation class, we're going to do that. And then stay tuned at the end of class. I'm going to tell you about next week's class. So let's get started. First off, as always, going to share the vocabulary. We'll send this to you by PDF. Don't worry. But as always, English is in the middle. Excuse me, Hebrew's in the middle. Transliteration to the right, English to the left, notes and gender, and we're also adding the roots because the roots will also help you discover these words and their connections to other things. So first off, what do we call Election Day or Elections Day, as I wrote here? Because it's literally, it's a plural in Hebrew, so I just translated it literally, although in English we normally say Election Day. In Hebrew, we say Yom Bechirot. Okay, it means an election day, whether that's here in Israel or anywhere else in the world that holds elections. Yom HaBechirot or Yom Bechirot. As I alluded to, in Israel, certainly for national elections and nowadays for local elections, it's considered a Yom Shabbaton. Okay, Shabbaton obviously coming from the word Shabbat, meaning rest. It's not coming from the word Shabbat in its literal sense. It's coming from Shabbat in what the root Shin Bet Taf means, which means to rest. The same root also gives us the word Shvita, a strike, like in a workplace. Yom Shabbaton means a day of rest, i.e. from work, right? If your municipality is voting, it means that local services there will likely be on a limited basis, and most people will have the day off. Not everyone, and it's important to check with your employer if you have the day off or not, but the vast majority of Israelis will have the day off next Tuesday, the 27th. What we are voting for is what we call in Hebrew, hareshuyot hamekomiyot. We'll detail exactly what that means in a little bit, but the local authorities, meaning local governance. This is equally important, not just what I said about the importance of voting in general and how important it is as Olim to vote in Israel. Also, an important reminder, and we've talked about this before in elections for the Knesset, in Israel, you do not have a local representative on the national level. We vote in Israel as one Mechoz Bechira. We vote as one electoral district for the Knesset. Therefore, you don't have a local representative representing you in Tel Aviv or Yerushalayim or Modi'in or Ra'anana or Ramat Beit Shemesh Gimel that sits in Knesset. Instead, we have one big Knesset, and then we have the Reshuyot Mekomiyot, the local authorities. We're going to talk about the breakdown of them and a little bit later what they actually do. But it's an important understanding why you need to vote in local elections, because these are the people who represent you on the most local level for your most local services that you often use much more than on the national level. Okay. In Hebrew, we have two verbs that mean to vote. And you're going to hear both of these interchangeably. First off, the name of the day, Yom HaBechirot, comes from one of these two verbs, livchor. Livchor means to vote, and it also means to choose. When I choose something, ani bocher be. Okay, that's another way to say who you're choosing or who you're voting for is ani bocher be. Okay, the other verb, which is the verb that's more used for the actual act of voting, is lehatzbia. Okay, lehatzbia means to vote, and it also means to point a finger. It comes from the same root as etzba, finger, and to point a finger. That's going to be very important when we look at another public service ad in a little bit. Okay, so two verbs that mean to vote. First off, what are we voting for? First off, you're going to vote for a muammad or a muammedet. Muammad, muammedet, depending on gender, is a candidate. Okay. You're going to vote for a candidate. When you vote in Israel on the local level, you are voting twice. One vote is for the head of your local council, and we'll talk about the three different types of local councils in a second. And the other one you're going to vote for is a reshima. The reshima is like how you vote in Knesset. You're going to vote for a party that's going to sit on the council, your local council. But the muammad is the person who's at the head of your local council. You're voting separately for them, and then you're voting for a party list who's going to sit on this council. So let's say you live in an iriya. Okay, an iriya is a municipality. Think of it like City Hall. excuse me, these differences are based on the population numbers in Israel. There are 254 local councils, if I'm not mistaken, and they're broken down into three categories. The one with the biggest population per entity is called an Iriya, a municipality. That's, for example, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, which is the largest municipality in Israel. Second is here where I live, Tel Aviv Yafo, Haifa, Beersheba, anywhere that has over a certain population number. I think it's 150,000, but don't hold me to that. Okay. The next size down, excuse me, before we get to the next size down, on an Iriya, you're going to vote for Rosh Ha'ir or Rosh Ha'iriya, the mayor. In normal English, we would say the mayor, but it's literally the head of the city council or head of the municipality. That's one vote. That's the muammad or muammedet we just talked about. And your other vote's going to be for the reshima, the excuse me, the list of a party that's you're hoping will enter the city council. City council works much like Knesset, where there's a threshold, there's a certain number of seats. Here in Tel Aviv, for example, we have 31 members of the Moatza. We'll get to that word in a second. And you're voting independently of the Muammad or Muammedet for Rosh Ha'ir, the party that you want to sit in on the city council. Okay, that goes the same for the next level of local governance in Israel, called a Moatza Mekomit, a local council. Moatza is a council. All three levels of local governance have a Moatza at one point or another. In the Iriya, they're the ones who sit in and around the Rosh Ha'ir, or Rosh Ha'iriya, in front of the mayor, and they're expected to form a coalition, and together they govern the municipality. Moatza Mekomit works exactly the same, only it's a smaller entity. Think of smaller towns or villages that have, again, a certain population number. That's the only difference between them. And then the smallest is what we call a Moatza Ezorit, a regional council. These are usually a combination of kibbutzim or moshavim, or very small towns that are geographically placed to each other. These are all in geographic proximity to each other. Okay, and then under a Moatza Ezorit, there's what we call a Vad Mekomi, a local committee. You'll also find these, by the way, in some bigger Iriot and Moatzot Mekomiot. A Vad Mekomi is basically, think of it like if you are live in a specific neighborhood or a borough. That would be the type of person who's included in a local committee. And we can go through some of those examples, but basically, you know, if you live in a local committee, most of us on this call who live in Israel are voting either in an Iriya, a Moatza Mekomit, maybe some of us in the Moatza Ezorit, okay? All of our local governance is defined by one of these three, and all of these are being voted on February 27th. The date was picked after being delayed twice. It was supposed to take place on October 31st. Obviously, the war prevented that from happening. It was then moved to the end of January and then further moved to the end of February next month. There are 14 municipalities who will not be voting next week. Instead, they will be voting in November. Those are the municipalities, and particularly there's 2 municipalities, and the rest are local and regional councils that were evacuated on October 7th. If you are from one of those communities, you've already gotten notice about that. The vast majority of us will be voting on February 27th. Okay, so where do we vote? We've talked about this before. Always good to remind ourselves. You vote at a kalpi. Kalpi is the word that's both the polling station and the polling booth. When you go to a polling station, and I'm going to show you again, remind you how to find your kalpi. You are sometimes there will be one kalpi within a kalpi. Those of you who live in a big neighborhood, for example, might have multiple kalpiot in your kalpi. Mine, for example, and I'm going to show you how you find mine, is in a school. And within the school, there are multiple kalpiot. Okay, so you're further assigned to one. Okay, that's very important, and I'm going to show you in a little bit Itul Kalpi, how to find the location of your polling station. Itul means the location or finding a place, and it's related to the word atal, site. That can be an atal internet, a internet website. That could also be an atal out in nature, a place that overlooks something, or you get to see all different things. Okay, it's a site, S-I-T-E. What's also important to know, whether or not you know your kalpi, is if you have, if you are handicapped, or we'll talk about some exceptions about not voting at your assigned kalpi, you can vote at a kalpi negisha. A kalpi negisha means an accessible polling station. That means it's accessible for those who are physically handicapped. The law in Israel is there is no absentee voting. So if you are in Israel on election day, but you can't get to your assigned kalpi, oftentimes within your same municipality, you can go to a kalpi negisha, an accessible polling station. You'll vote slightly differently, but your vote will nonetheless be counted. This goes for people, for example, who, God forbid, are in the hospital on election day. This is for people who are in active service, be they police, be they in the military. If they're in the military, by the way, on February 27th, regardless of where they are in the country, they will vote on their base. There was a pretty incredible story on the news the other week about setting up polling stations in Gaza for soldiers who are serving, not just, and also, by the way, running for local councils, to show how important this day is and how holy it is. But a kalpi negisha, you will look for, and your municipality, your local council, your local government will announce where those are ahead of next Tuesday if you don't know where they are. I'm going to show you in a second how to find your own kalpi. To get to a kalpi, you're going to need a teuda mezaha. I'm going to show you a really cute, quick infographic I made up. What that includes. A teuda mezaha is any identifying document. You'll hear this term used anytime you go to a place that requires some sort of check-in. It could be a university campus. It could be the airport, even before you get to check-in. It could be anywhere or if you're stopped by the police and they ask you for a teuda mezaha, any kind of identifying document that's official, which could be your teudat zehut, your national ID, your dalkon, your passport, your reshayon nehiga, your driver's license, if you're in the military, your teudat chogel, your active service ID card. You can also use your teudat ma'avar if you are in the process of making aliyah or you are not a full citizen. What also makes local elections different than national elections is that if you have permanent residency in Israel, often the spouses or partners of Israeli citizens, you are allowed to vote in local elections. So if that affects you or your family or friends, always a good reminder to let them know they can vote in local elections next week. When you vote, after you bring your teuda mezaha and you're allowed into the kalpi, you're going to receive 2 matafot. A matafa is an envelope. Okay. If you're voting in your own kalpi, the one you're assigned to, and again, we'll show it to you in a second, you're going to get 2 matafot. One is going to be sehuba, yellow, and one is going to be levana. Why? Because remember, you're voting twice on local election day. You're voting for the rosh of your local governance, the head of your local governance, the mayor, the head of the regional council, the head of the local council, and you're voting for the council itself. If you vote in one of these places that has a vad mekomi, that's usually the smallest places, like a kibbutz, for example, or some neighborhoods in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv, you'll also get a third envelope, a matafa kula. That is for your vad mekomi, your local committee. Okay, again, very few examples of that in Israel. And if you're not voting at your normally assigned kalpi, you will be voting in a matafa kfula. What basically happens is after you vote, all of your envelopes will be put in another envelope because it's an extra addition of protection because you're not voting at your assigned one. And what happens on election day, once the votes are counted at each individual kalpi, then the double stuffed envelopes will be checked. In normal times, that would be soldiers, people in the hospital, diplomats serving abroad, and so forth. This year, unfortunately, we have a lot of people who won't be voting at their assigned kalpi, so that the counting will take even longer this year because of a matafa kfula. Okay. Yellow envelope gets a petek, white envelope gets a petek lavan, a white slip. The white slip is for the council, and I'll show you an infogram in a second for that. Petek tzahov will be put in the matafa tzeuba. Yellow slip, yellow envelope. Color coded, really easy. Okay. The word for voice is also the word for your vote, kol. We get to use this great word. I love this word because we never use it any other time of the year, and I'm going to show it to you in a second what it looks like. The palgod. Palgod is the divider behind which you're going to vote, and the teva is the box that at the front of the of your kalpi with the inspectors ensuring that it was a fair and democratic process is where you're going to place your matafot. Okay, let me show you very quickly what I am talking about here. So first off, let us find your ID. I'm going to show you the website in a second. I actually want to pull up another piece of information. Let's see if I can find it here. I have a infographic of how to vote. Let me just make sure I can pick it, find it. There it is. Okay. Okay, so let's just go over what we did, and I'm going to show you the website where you can check everything in a second. So first off, number one, confirm your kalpi, which we're going to do in a second. Number two, bring your ID and nothing else. You are requested not to bring bags, luggage, suitcases. Don't bring any of that to the kalpi. You can bring a phone. Since Corona and also issues with regards to the sanctity of your vote, the inspectors at the front of the table will usually not take your picture while voting. But if you bring a friend who stands outside the kalpi, they'll be able to take a picture, or you can do a selfie. But no one else will be doing it. You can bring your phone, you can bring any information you want, and I'll show you how to find your specific candidates in a second. Yeah, but you need to bring ID, valid ID. You're going to present yourself. It's going to look exactly like this, where you see here, I can't zoom in anymore, but we'll send you this infographic. At the bottom left of the page, you see there's a table with several different inspectors with a box, that's the teva in front of them. And on the left-hand side is the palgod. Behind the palgod, as you see in the middle, you'll see all those cubbies with little slips of paper. There will be the white slips will be the ones for the moatza, for the city council or local council. And you'll put that in the white envelope. One slip, one envelope. No more than one slip. If the slip that represents your party, and it's represented just like on the Knesset level between 1 to 3 letters, is not there, you could write it in on a blank white piece of paper. Likewise, for the head of your city, local council, regional council, yellow slip, yellow piece of yellow envelope, only one. If it's not there, you can write it in on the yellow slips of paper. If you vote in a place that has a vad mekomi, you'll also get a blue envelope, but that is not the majority of you on this call. Finally, at the end, you drop it in the teva at the front, you get your teuda mezahah back, and you're done. Simple as that. Very easy. The slips of paper are there specifically for Olim like us. The idea at the start of the state of Israel in voting was to make voting as easy as possible for people who did not speak Hebrew. And so to make it as foolproof as possible, all you had to do is learn the 1, 2, or 3 letters that represents your party. And you see on the screen here in small letters under the 1 or 2 or 3 letters, is written out the name of the party. So you can also make sure that you're voting for the right people, and you just put it in and you're done. The yellow envelopes, the yellow slips for the heads, for mayors and heads of councils, it'll just have their name written out. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a great website that every election cycle just gets better and better. And this is the Portal לבחירות לרשויות המקומיות, right? This is the portal for local elections. Here you'll find everything. The major things you need to look for are right here on the bottom left. Okay. You have Itur Kalpi, we just talked about that, the location of your polling station. And you have here on the left-hand side, Reshimot HaMuamadim. This is very important because, again, 254 local councils, that's a lot of people running. If you click on it, you can find out who's running in your local elections. It's not going to give you their platforms, right? That's propaganda material. That's campaigning material that isn't included here, but you will see the total list of people who are running. So for example, הרשות שלי היא Tel Aviv Yafo. When I click on Tel Aviv Yafo, I get all the information about my rashut, my local authority. Okay, so it says Tel Aviv Yafo. It tells you from the right-hand side at the top, there are 577,669 toshavim, residents of the city of Tel Aviv Yafo. Of those, 468,052 are balei zchut bechira, are eligible to vote on election day. There are 31 חברי המועצה, 31 members of the city council. 4 מועמדים לראש רשות, 4 candidates for the head of the local authority, and 15 רשימות למועצה, and 15 lists for the city council. And then it gives you all the candidates. So first off, מועמדים לראש רשות. Candidates, as we said, מועמד, מועמדת, מועמדים is the plural. Candidates for the head of the local council. As you see here, we have 4, right? We have, sorry, just one second. We have Suleiman Amir, Badran Suleiman Amir, his first name is Amir, who is with the party Kulanu Ha'ir Yafa Tel Aviv. We have Orna Barbivai representing the Yesh Atid party. We have Yuval Tselner, who's representing the Tikva Hadasha party. And then we have the incumbent Ron Huldai representing the Tel Aviv Achad party. On a local level, you're going to find both national parties like Yesh Atid, as you see here, and you're going to find local parties that don't exist, right? Tel Aviv Achad is clearly just for Tel Aviv. Because what happens, you're going to vote for one of these 4, or maybe write in a candidate, and then you're going to pick one of the Reshimot LeMoatza, and there's 15 of them. And you can pick any of these, and you'll see there's a whole bunch. It says what their otiot are, the name of their party, how many candidates they're putting forward. They don't have to put up all 31, because not everyone is aspirational to have the entire city council, nor is that possible. Mossad Nivchar, what are they running for? Council. And if they have a candidate for the head of the municipality, it'll be listed here. So if we go down to, for example, in all these 15, we go to Orna Barbivai, you see that her otiot, you're going to look for the petek if you want to vote not just for her, but specifically for the party that represents her platform on the council, right? Because the idea is you want to stack the municipality with people who represent your voice, not just the mayor, but also the council. So if I want to vote for both Orna Barbivai and the people who are in her party, I'm going to pick the ticket, the petek that says pay hey. And if I click on here, I will get the list of all the people who are running in numerical order. And this numerical order, just like in the Knesset, is the people who go in first, right? So the top of the list means that they're the first ones, to go into the Muatza if they're elected, based on the percentage they get, and you move down, okay? 15 altogether, you'll see that again. Yuval Tselner has his own party there, and Ron Huldai has his own party there, okay? it's a very easy website to check. Again, it's not going to give you their specific platforms, their specific points, their visions for your local council. You need to look that up yourself. But at least you can see here the total list of people who are running in your area. Everything else, you're going to need to do some homework on your own. We're all adults here. I trust that you can do this because already you found the names of their parties, you found the candidates' names. All you have to do is a Google search, folks. You can type in any local rashut here and you'll get it. So for example, I'm in a city. Let's say it's a Moatza Mekumit, a smaller town. Let's say it's Ra'anana. Ra'anana. Right? If I click on Ra'anana, I get, again, how many people live there, how many people are eligible to live, how many people to vote, excuse me, number of people in the council, candidates for the head of the council, how many lists are running for local council. Okay. So same idea. You can go through all of these. Let's say I wanted to do let's say I wanted to do a regional council. One that I know, which is Matei Yehuda. Okay, Matei Yehuda is the area around Beit Shemesh. I would click on Matei Yehuda, and I see, again, same idea. 44,000 Toshavim, of which 35 are eligible to vote, 57 members of the council, because again, they're representing multiple small communities, 4 representatives, 4 candidates, excuse me, for the head, 157 lists running all together. It's a lot of people running. You can see all of these because you're also running, representing your own small community. Okay, how do you find out where to vote? As you saw, let's go back. If we go back here, we said Itul Kalpi, right? All you need to find where you vote. First off, those of you who voted before in Knesset elections, which we had, when was that now? 2 years ago in 2022, you're probably voting in the exact same building or the exact same location. It may be a different part of your building, but you're going to vote in the same location. If you forgot where you voted, or it's your first time, or you've moved since the last time, you're going to go to this website, Itul Kalpi. It's on that same website, and we're going to send you the list, the URL. Don't worry about finding it. And it's going to look like this. I'm going to pause instead of writing in my Teudat Zehut. You don't need to see that, but just so that you can see what it looks like as a screenshot. Excuse me. Okay. Well, you can see it here, but that's fine. Okay. Your Teudat Zehut contains 2 important pieces of information on it. It's your Teudat Zehut, your Mispar Zehut. Okay, your Teudat Zehut is the number, 9-digit number. Let me pull it up on the regular site. Okay, and that's what you're going to put here. And here it's asking you for Tarikh Hanpakat Teudat Zehut. We're going to send you an infographic so you see exactly where this is. But if you have the biometric Teudat Zehut, it is not the bottom date, it's the date just above it. This is the date in which your Teudat Zehut was issued to you. It's a further security check that's used often in governmental agencies to prove that you are who you are and this is your ID and you're not using a fake one. Putting in both of those will give you your Itul Makom Akalpi, which looks like this. Don't worry, you're going to get a screenshot of all these things so you can look at it at your own pace. Don't worry about missing any of this. That's the same one. And then we need to go to here. Okay, when you type in all your information and you're eligible to vote, it'll say here, Hincha Baal or Hinech Balat, Zchut Bechira Bechirot Lerashuyot Mekomiyot. You are hereby eligible to vote in the upcoming elections, and it tells you the day. And then it gives you all the information. First off, Hakalpi Shelcha. Your Kalpi, it's speaking to me. It gives you the name of it, right? So I vote at the Beit Sefer, Beit Yaakov, Binyan Dromi, Tel Aviv, Yafo. Okay, it's around the corner for me. Very easy to get to. And then it gives you the address, Yafa, Betzalel Yafe, Shmone, Tel Aviv Yafo, right? And then under it, this is very important for those of you who vote in a kalpi with multiple sites within it. For example, mine has up to 10 different kalpiot within the school. So it's important to also know the number. I vote in Mispal Kalpi 495.0. Okay, that's my polling station number. If you don't have all this information, but you know where you vote, don't worry about it. When you get to the entrance of your kalpi, right, there will be a registrar there, and they will look you up and they will point you to the right room if there are multiple sites at your place. Okay, so this just helps direct you where you're going. If you forgot, and if you can write this down, great. If not, don't worry about it. You're going to be checked at the entrance to know where you're going, and before you get the envelopes to vote in your specific kalpi, you'll be checked again to make sure you're in the right place. Okay, so some great resources out there. When we talk about that website, and I'm going to send that to you, these infographics to help pave the way, find where you vote and how to vote. It's very important. Make it as easy for you as possible. Excuse me. So we went through all those words. Let's start talking a little bit in the time we have left, and then I want to show you another public service announcement about election day using all the words we've done. And this is a preview for this week, but also in general, because again, Israelis talk about politics all the time. It may be a source of discomfort for you in your specific country of origin, but here in Israel, we talk about politics. There may be some people you just don't talk politics with, and that's fine, but otherwise, you often will talk. And this is where it often comes up when you're going to ask someone, who did you vote for? Or who are you voting for? Okay. Lemi matzbia or lemi matzbia. Okay, this is who are you voting for? Who you voting for? Right, we talked about those two verbs, bocher, livchor, and latzbia. When we do actual practical voting, we use the verb lehatzbia, which also means to point a finger, right? Lemi matzbia or lemi matzbia. Who are you voting for? Or for whom are you voting? Apropos last week's class about prepositions at the end of sentences, right? Lemi matzbia, you would say to a male. Lemi matzbia, to a female. This is who are you voting for? If you want to ask who did you vote for, let's say it is election day or it's the day after election day, and you want to ask in the past tense, lemi hitzbata, male, lemi hitzbat, female. Who did you vote for? Right? Both of these are great topics of conversation or to start a conversation. Who are you voting for or who did you vote for? And this is how you'll ask. Right? And frankly, for me, and this gets into our next section here, is the more important thing. It's not just who you voted for, it's מה הנושאים החשובים ביותר לך או לך בבחירות האלה. What are the most important נושאים, topics, or concerns for you in these elections? Right? When we talk about elections, yes, we talk about personalities. Yes, we talk about this and that, the other. But we also need to zoom out and what are we actually voting for? And we'll get to some of those topics in a sentence in a second. But this is a great way to start a conversation, hint, hint for this week's conversation class. What's important for you that you're voting on, right? You're not just voting for a name, you're voting for a platform of ideas, of promises to keep after election day. And this is a great way to frame that to start a conversation, right? מה הנושאים החשובים ביותר לך, I would say to a male, לך to a female, בבחירות האלה. What are the most important issues for you in these elections? This is also a great question when we don't know who we're voting for yet, and we want to find out what other people are voting for that will help inform our own vote ahead of election day. What are some of those topics? What are some of the things that local governance is in charge of that national is not? Here are just some of the big ones. Chinuch, education. It's true that Misrad HaChinuch, the Ministry of Education in Jerusalem, is in charge of writing the curriculum for the public school system in Israel. However, each municipality, each local council is in charge of running their מערכת החינוך, their educational system. That includes how many schools they have, how many different classes they have. Did you know, for example, that if you have a significant amount of students who are native English speakers or native Spanish speakers or native whatever speakers that are in Hebrew, the municipality and the system has to provide some native language courses for them. Very important for us Olim Chadashim who want to raise family here to know that. How many teachers are on staff? How are they paid? What are their conditions for employment? Even though, again, they are part of a teachers union, the conditions that make the educational system in one city better than another are down to the local governance. So chinuch is very important to understand when we're voting next Tuesday because it's run by the local municipality. Shitur, right? From the same root, we get the word mishtara is the act of what a mishtara does, which is shitur, policing or security. In addition to Mishteret Yisrael, the Israel police, we also have local governance, local policing. That could be, as you've heard probably in the news, and we've talked about this before, a kitat konenut, a neighborhood committee, security committee. It could be a sayeret bitachon, a security reconnaissance team of the municipality here in Tel Aviv. In addition to the police, we also have the municipality's own security system, right? So what does security look like in your local governance? Tarbut, culture. This is everything from museums to events outside or inside, to all sorts of everyday events or monthly or annual events that your municipality does. Most of those are on a local governance level. Pnai, leisure. For example, here in Tel Aviv, we have many matnasim, community centers. We also have the wonderful phenomenon of a country. Country is originally coming from the English country club, but it's not country club in the snooty exclusionary way. It's rather a all-together fitness center, leisure center that are also municipal run. Okay, Tachbua Tziburit, very important. Your local municipality is more in charge of Tachbua Tziburit, public transportation, than they give themselves credit for. For example, where are the bus stations? How frequent are buses coming? Is there more than just buses? Is there a light rail? Where is the light rail going to run? Does the light rail and other public forms of transportation run on Shabbat and holidays or not? These are all made decisions by the local governance. Here in Tel Aviv, we have a mayor who has for many years trying to push off responsibility for that to the national Misrad HaTachbura, the National Ministry of Transportation, but that is a local decision how the transportation is run and where. Diul, housing, another thing that local governance is in charge of. Zoning for housing. Also, is this housing being made subsidized? Is it given in particular to specific populations? For example, here in Tel Aviv, we have housing that is set aside for young people that has a subsidized price to it for a contract of several years. Does your municipality have something similar or not? And if not, what are you doing to let the people who you are voting for know that's an issue? And in general, tashtit, infrastructure. That could be sewage system. It's been raining for several weeks here in Israel. Is your local infrastructure up to speed? That is a local concern, not a national concern. So these are all just some of the many different things that emphasize why voting in local elections is important, because they're responsible for these and many other things. To further illustrate that, and that verb lehatzbia, to vote, and also point a finger, and hopefully you absorbed a little bit more of this vocabulary now, or it makes a little sense. I'm going to show you a public service ad that helps illustrate all this. I'll again send you the link afterwards so you can watch it at your leisure. It does have subtitles in Hebrew, but it is a get out the vote ad. And you'll see a lot of what we just talked about illustrated.
כאן אני רוצה גוף תאורה, כאן פינת ישיבה, פה כדאי שתהיה לנו ספרייה. אתם איתי?
ברור. את רק צריכה להצביע.
מצוין. כאן גן משחקים, היכל תרבות, כאן עוד בית ספר. שיהיו פחות תלמידים בכל כיתה. גינת כלבים, מתקני כושר.
ושבילי אופניים. הלו, אופניים שלי.
ושיטור עירוני. כאן נקים שכונה חדשה, או שיהיה דיור בר השגה. אני מעדיפה כחול לבן, נמאס לי לחפש. את הירוק. פה לשתול עצים, כי חם. כיכר. פה צריך כיכר. אז יש לנו את זה?
כן, את רק צריכה להצביע.
אז פה...
לא פה. להצביע בקלפי, בבחירות לרשויות המקומיות.
הבנתי אותך.
גם בימים אלו יש לנו כוח להשפיע. ב-27 בפברואר כולנו נצא להצביע בבחירות לרשויות המקומיות. למידע ולאיתור מקום הקלפי ייכנסו לפורטל הבחירות של משרד הפנים. מחכים לכם.
בקלפי.
Okay, if that was too fast for you, that's part of the shtick behind this. First off, it's a little bit more upbeat than the ad we saw last week. It's meant to be fast, right? The voter, in this case, actress and singer Anya Buchstein, is pointing out all the different things she wants in her local municipality. She wants a garden, she wants trees, she wants to build here and there and all sorts of things. And the staff behind her, who are the pkidim, the clerks of the municipality, say, Barul, of course, rak tzricha latzbia. You only need to vote. She is matzbia. She's pointing with her finger where she wants things. And they keep saying, using the same verb, yes, all you have to do is vote. And then, of course, interrupting her at the end, they say, lopo, not pointing with your finger here, but voting in your kalpi. Okay, it's a very cute ad, public service ad. It's also good to watch over to see all the different things that she's pointing out, because those are all things that the local municipality is in charge of. Schools, community center, bike lanes, policing bike lanes, trees. Where are trees planted? Where is there a garden? Where is there a public square? All those things are local municipality affairs. All the more reason to be sure to vote. Okay, with that, I'm going to break here so we can start answering some of your questions, which I see we have a bunch in the Q&A. Let's get to that. Okay. Do people who work retail service industry get the day off? Can you go shopping to a restaurant on election day? Great question. Again, if your local municipality is voting next Tuesday, you will have the day off. It's worth just getting a reminder from your place of work that that's the case. Most stores will be open. They may be on limited service or things like that, but most places will be open for business in that respect, in terms of retail and restaurants. I see a bunch of people asking questions I already answered. What is the voting age? I didn't answer that. Great. For local elections, it is younger. If I'm not mistaken, it is 16. It is not 18, but certainly it's 18 and up. I believe it's 16 for local elections, but you have to check on that. But it is at the very least 18. Do all polling stations have the same operating hours? Great question. I didn't answer that before. All polling stations in large areas, and it's up to 300 people in a given population, are open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. If you live in a smaller community, I don't mean community as in a neighborhood in a town. I mean like a kibbutz or a moshav. It's 300 people or less. It's usually 8 to 8 p.m. Okay. But otherwise, all polls in the country will open at 7 a.m. Great question. Okay, let's go back to Q&A. Are there primaries in Israel, and are people required to register as members of a political party like in Israel? Great question. For local elections, there usually aren't primaries. There can be, especially if the party is affiliated on the national level. But it's not necessary. In Israel, you do not need to register to vote. We don't, I'm going to say something maybe a little political here. We don't hinder people's right to vote in Israel. You do not need to register to vote in Israel. All you do is plug in your information like I showed you, and it'll tell you, are you eligible to vote or not? That's it. You don't have to do anything else but show up to your kalpi with your Teudat Mizaha, to your polling station with your identifying document, and that's it. You get to vote. You don't need to do anything else. Are there primaries in Israel? No. In general, especially on the national level, only 4 national parties have primaries that are only open to those members. But it is not a requirement in Israel for a political party to hold a primary election. I see people asking questions. I think I answered things like, what's the yellow envelope? Where about displaced people? Blue slip. If I didn't answer that, please ask it again, because I see you asked these at the beginning of class, but I did answer these, I'm pretty sure. Is this election site available in English? No, it is not. It is not. It is available in Israel's 2 languages, Hebrew and Arabic. Again, that's part of why we're teaching it here, and I'm showing you the geography of it. It is not available in English. Why are parties different during a local election and national election? Very simple. Local elections have different needs than national elections. Like I said, local elections deal with so many immediate concerns, like I showed you there, and national elections deal with different issues. There is overlap. For example, here in Tel Aviv, we have lists that are affiliated with Yesh Atid and the Likud Party and Otzma Yehudit and Shas and Yadut HaTorah, who all run on the national level. And then we have local parties that represent local actors. Again, one of the advantages of local elections, it's people you actually get to meet and live in your neighborhood. Just because someone lives in your neighborhood and is a member of Knesset does not mean that they are responsible for your needs. Whereas here in Israel, in the local level, if someone is sitting on the city council and they live in your neighborhood, they are 100% beholden to you and what you need, because that's what they're in charge of. A very important distinction. Can one fill out their yellow slip and not their white slip if we are not informed enough to decide? Absolutely. You can pick only one to do. You can do both. You can write in on either of them. You can choose not to vote for any of them and leave in the blank slip. But one of the reasons why I want to be sure we did this lesson ahead of time is, number one, to show you where to find the list of parties and candidates for mayor in your given town and where to find that, and give you the next 7 days to do your own research to see, okay, who do I actually want to vote for? Can a Gil Toshav be a member of any city, local, state of Israeli political party count? No. Okay. In Israel, like I showed you with your Teudat Zehut and your ID number, you are assigned to a specific kalpi. That is whether you are an Ezrach, a citizen, or a Toshav, a resident. You are assigned to a different place that is in your Teudat Zehut. That slip of paper that comes with your Teudat Zehut, with your national ID, it's called the Sefach. That lists your address. Okay, when you live in Israel, you are registered with the Interior Ministry, Misrad HaPnim, to a specific location where you live. When you move, anytime you move in Israel, even if it's literally next door, you have to update Misrad HaPnim as to your residency location. Okay, so you are not assigned, you can't just vote anywhere in Israel. You are assigned first and foremost to your kalpi. If you can't get to your kalpi for reasons like illness, you're in the hospital, or you're serving in active duty, you have a different provision like I announced. But otherwise, you have to vote in your own kalpi on election day. Are you allowed to take a list of people you want to vote for along? Absolutely. Any material that'll help you vote, you can do that. You can bring your phone and write it down in notes in your phone. That's no problem. You can also ask for help, by the way. The proctors who sit at the front of the room in your kalpi, you can ask them for help if you need it. How is the order of list people representing a particular party determined? The head of their party decides. Again, some parties represent national parties, in which case the head of that party will often have influence on that role. Some of them, for example, here in Tel Aviv, we have several parties that are simply a combination of several people, and they decide amongst themselves who's going to be in what list and what number. Is there a map that shows all the districts or municipalities? I believe on Wikipedia there is, but again, there's 200 plus of them. So some of them are really small and some of them are really big. But again, you can look it up on Wikipedia. I think they have a list of all local governance in Israel. How do you find an accessible voting place if you can't use the local one? Again, your local municipality will have a list of kalpiot negishot, of accessible polling places. You need to be in touch with your municipality. If you live here in Tel Aviv, you go to the Tel Aviv municipality website. If you live in Ra'anana, there's Beit Shemesh, and so forth. I see a lot of people asking a question I already answered. Again, folks, that website I showed you, and we're going to send you the link, don't worry about it, has a list of all the people running in your local municipality. It is up to you, the voter, whether that's here, by the way, or in your local governance, wherever you are in the world, to do your own research. There is not going to be one website, impartial, that's going to give you all the information about each candidate. That just doesn't exist. That doesn't exist here in Israel, and it probably doesn't exist where you're from either. You're going to need to do the research yourselves. I trust you can do that. I'm giving you the list. You can just plug in their name, the name of the party or the name of the candidate, put it in. Some of them, especially those of you who live in immigrant heavy populations, like here in Tel Aviv and in other places, some of them might have websites and information in multiple languages. But the official Israeli government's portal for local governance is obviously only going to be in the state's official languages, Hebrew and Arabic. What is the word for diversity if it's an important issue for me having different genders, religion, sexual orientation in the city council? The word is givun. You can easily find that in any dictionary. That's not a word. You may not hear it often in Israeli society, but that it is indeed a word you can look up on your own. But the word in Hebrew is givun. Gimel Yud Vav Vav Nun. Are dirty streets or the animal population considered issues? 100%. Next week, and this is the preview for next week's class, we're going to talk about all the service numbers, emergency and non-emergency services, including local municipality services. So we're going to do a review of what we just talked about, but also talk about national service numbers. And we're going to show you how to report things like, for example, dirty streets or traffic signs that are out of order, or especially here in Tel Aviv is an issue of animals whose owners don't clean up after them. But all of those are local governance issues, 100%. Under which category of local governance concerns would garbage collection be? You can simply call it ashpa, garbage. You could call it tavu'ah, sanitation. All the words you would use in your native language simply translate into Hebrew. I received the card for voting in October. Does it still work for us now? Yes. Back in October, when we first planned on having local elections before the start of the war, what's often sent out ahead of elections, local and national, is what we call a hoda'a lebocher, an announcement to a voter, and it has all of your specific information about your kalpi printed on it. You don't have to bring that. If you didn't get one in the mail, don't worry. The website we're going to send to you as well, and the infographics show you how to find your voting place. That is more than enough information. You don't need to bring that postcard, but what was ever printed on that postcard, if you still have it, is still valid. That's going to be the same thing as if you were to look it up right now. Is it mandatory to vote in Israel? This is not Australia where they have those rules, but I would say yes, it's mandatory to vote in Israel. That's me, Jay, telling you that. But the law does not mandate that you vote. But I think if you choose your citizenship and choose to make Aliyah, you had better vote. Full stop. Can one hear the difference between the mail and who you are voting for? Lemi matzbiya, lemi matzbi'a. Okay, lemi matzbiya, lemi matzbi'a. I'm overemphasizing it to make the difference. But when you're speaking, it's not going to be as when you hear other people, especially native Hebrew speakers, it's going to all sound the same. Lemi matzbiya, lemi matzbi'a. Okay, but they're going to sound interchangeable, even though you're speaking to a different gender. What is otiot? Otiot literally mean letters. It's the 1, 2, or 3 letters that represent the party you're voting for into local council. I lack the Hebrew vocabulary to know what different party candidates stand for when I look at their websites. We have a whole lesson from 2-3 weeks ago about online translation guides. There is no reason any of you on this call cannot look up the information, even if you have to use the infernal guide that is Google Translate. But folks, you can access using that class we talked about, online translation services. You can look and up all the information you need. It's all there online. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I can't play the ad again, but you can watch it on yourselves and watch what's said in the subtitles and look at the vocabulary, because a lot of our vocabulary is in that ad. Will you explain what the parties and candidates are on Wednesday? Hard to vote for what is not clear. Again, there are 254 local councils being voted on in Israel on next Tuesday. I can't go through all 254. And on top of that, several tens of thousands candidates. I'll show you again how to access material on Wednesday, but that is not the course of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about how you talk about politics this coming Wednesday in our first class of Cafe Ole conversations. Don't worry about missing the website, folks. We're going to send you all the information. Don't panic. I love that you're all concerned to find all the websites. We're going to send it all to you like we do every week. Don't worry, we're going to send you the lists. If I understand right, you can vote for 2 different parties. No, you're voting for one candidate for the head of your municipality and one party for your council. 2 votes. One is for a specific muammad or muammedet candidate, and one is for a specific reshima, a party list. But you are voting twice. One for the head of your local council, one for the city council itself. How long do city council members serve? 5 years. Someone bedridden at home, how do they vote? Again, we do not have absentee voting in Israel. You have to vote in person. If you can't vote at your regular kalpi, you can go to an accessible kalpi, one that is equipped for people with physical handicap and all sorts of things. But if you can't get out of bed, unfortunately, you cannot vote on election day. We made Aliyah 2 weeks ago. Would we be in the system to vote yet? Great question. I don't know about local elections. You can always just check with the website I showed you today, and we'll send out that link as well. Are there areas in Israel that are comparable to swing states in the US? Again, folks, national elections, we vote as one electoral district. We don't vote like America, all other democratic countries vote in electoral districts. We don't do that in Israel. And in local elections, there is no such thing as a swing state. There are parts of a city that vote differently, and you can see that in the breakdown of past elections, and you'll see that again in next week's results. But we don't have swing states because we don't vote as electoral districts on a national level. That's a very important distinction in how Israeli democracy works or perhaps doesn't work. Can someone by proxy for you if you're out of the country? No. No. No absentee voting, no by proxy. Isn't it possible in hospitals to assist patients who can't vote? It is a very specific procedure. If someone is, God forbid, in the hospital on election day, all the information is on that website, albeit in Hebrew. I highly recommend going through it with a translation guide, even with Google Translate and all its faults, to go through the specifics of it. If you are not near your designated voting station, can you vote at a different one? No. Again, folks, you have to vote at your designated kalpi. Only reasons you cannot are, God forbid, you're sick and physically enrolled in a hospital, or you are in active duty as a police person or a soldier. It's the reason why we have the day off of work on election day in Israel is to ensure you get out the vote. You have usually from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. to go vote. That is plenty of time to vote at your specific kalpi. Okay, we are unfortunately out of time. I see we have more questions. I love that you're interested in this topic. Again, we're going to send you all the information we covered so you can go at your own leisure through all the information, all the different ways to find out where you're voting, who's running in your local elections, find out all the information that public service had so you can practice your Hebrew. This week, we're not, again, the elections class, the conversations class, excuse me, is about how to talk politics. We're going to revisit those questions. Who are you voting for? What topics are interested for you? And how to conduct a conversation around politics. It's not going to be a further review necessarily of everything we went through, but we'll touch on it just at the end. It's more about your conversation skills and striking up a conversation about voting. Maybe one of the questions you want to ask in Hebrew and learning how to say it is, where is your kalpi, or where is my kalpi, or how can I find out more information? All of that we can cover as a conversation, but all the information we went through today, we'll send it to you in the description of this class. Websites, all the information you need. Toda rabah. Thank you all for joining. Next week, like I said, we're going to go over service numbers, everything from emergency numbers to non-emergency numbers, such as how to get in touch with your municipality if there's a light broken, or there's a scooter blocking the sidewalk, or any of the other important things that you need to know as an Israeli citizen, who to call for what service. With that, toda rabah. Thank you all for joining. I will see you all next week on Monday. Those of you who are signed up for our conversation class, I will see you this Wednesday. Otherwise, until next week, litraot. Take care.